So SHAINA ANAND is based in Mumbai, and she's a filmmaker and an artist, and an initiator of a collective practice called CAMP, which is also based in Mumbai. In which basically CAMP is very interested in media and the moving image and archives generally. So CAMP came together in 2007, and initially consisting of SHAINA ANAND and Sanjay Bhangar and Ashok Sukumaran. Okay, by setting up camp in Mumbai, the artists ANAND, SHAINA ANAND and Ashok Sukumaran had already strong and well-recognized individual practices, and they were participated in numerous kind of important international exhibitions. And CAMP's reason to exist is that it produces and sustains long duration and sometimes large-scale artistic work. So their practices generally span several years and is very wide, kind of wide-ranging practice. Several projects, each of them lasting, kind of going through many iterations and being realized in various manifestations over various platforms. So among their concerns is they look at film, video installation, software, open access, archives, and public programming with broad interest in technology, film, and theory. Projects have included technical experimentation and artistic form, the relation between them, issues of global phenomena, ships, CCTV, emotional state of workers and guards, phone leaks, cinematic, digital, and energetic media. And so very much interested in a kind of a politics of the media as well. Not just in Mumbai in India, but also projects that they've done globally. With participation in numerous important international exhibitions such as the Sharjah Biennial, Documenta, Guangzhou Biennial, the New Museum Triennial, and apart from, part of their practice is also that they run two very large media archives, okay? And perhaps SHAINA, you can also introduce the audience to the two archives and during your presentation. Please join me in welcoming.
I know it's a beautiful day outside, so thanks for coming in. And I'll try to make it as dark as possible so we get in the cinema mood and be able to travel. Because otherwise, honestly, the outside is more inviting at the moment. But thank you, Iftikhar, and thank you, ICM, South Asian Studies, Visual Culture, Artists, whoever got me here. I'm really happy to be here. And thank you all for taking out this beautiful Friday evening for coming here. Just check if I have my image. No. How do I get that on? It says on. A picture mute. Maybe not on mute. Maybe that's it. I think we're good.
Yeah, okay, great.
So I'll try to stand up, but I have this very strange body ache, which is going to make me sit from time to time. It's like a pre-flu condition. But I want to take you all on some of the sort of genealogies and paths and questions that CAMP asks itself and has asked as we make work, have made work and move forward. And I think one of the main questions is within the title of this talk, what can be or what is cinema at the time of more cameras than people. And if you didn't figure that out, it's an acronym for CAMP. So here we are. What's wrong with it? No, you don't have. Now it's playing for me. Should pull it out? Sorry about this. It's also really pulled. Should I keep it here? Should we start at the beginning? Without image song. Okay. So, do we have the lights on? So, of course, here we are, the turn of the century. Cinema is still a very new medium. Currently speaking, it's only 125 years old, so of course it's brand new compared to poetry or sculpture or architecture or painting. And here we see women make movies, they edit, splice it up, put them into neat titles and categories, make archives, index it. We see cameras taking a life of their own and running away from the author and sort of walking on their own feet, getting on top of buildings. And of course we see subjects who keep changing, they become the audience, they become the subject, and women make movies. So of course, gloriously deterministic, important moment in the history of our documentary cinema in particular. You all probably recognize just where it's coming from. A machine eye that is not a human eye that is going to tell us how we see, what we see, and somehow become our memory machines for this very new time we're still in. Right? So here's where maybe for a lot of us, our, this machine entered the river of time sideways 100 odd years ago, and quite soon in our lives, the machine eye becomes this, right? Here we are, right? Of course, this is Iraqi civilians being iris scanned, but you see how soon that romance or that promise of Kino Pravda goes straight into sort of the biopolitics and into our skin. So somewhere between this is where we have to situate ourselves, right, as we're making images. And that's where I come in as a young filmmaker assisting a fairly established filmmaker in Bombay. It's the mid-90s, it's 97 to be precise. We're traveling India on this long junket, like endless road trip through India in 1997 to commemorate the 50 years of independence. And I'm assisting Saeed Mirza, someone I still deeply care about. He's still a mentor of sorts to me, but I'm also 20 and I have thousands of questions as to what the fuck are we doing with our documentary apparatus traveling through India. Well-meaning director, his humanity quotient is pretty up there. So I'm not working with the crew of, I'm not working with the BBC or like Nat Geo or even Al Jazeera. I'm working with a crew that I'm close to, someone who's formative to my life, and yet we're doing things like this. And it's not. I don't know why that's happening. But you see a certain kind of framing of family portrait and a very particular relationship between the author, who's asking questions, the subject. and the camera, right? This lens that's now going to zoom in a certain way. So while working on something like this, I would get extremely agitated because people would say, what's your problem with this image? Saeed is asking all the right questions. You went into the field, then met Rosu, heard her story, then went to Saeed as the assistant director and said, Chal, we should interview her. Like, really, why are you getting so agitated with this image? And I feel like, if you saw this in a previous time, you'd say Anglo-Saxon male gaze. Then you'd say, okay, Indian director, but then you'd still say male gaze. And then you'd say feminist gaze, post-feminist, and they, and then post-queer, and so on and so on and so on. And you might refilter what you're seeing. But my problem always was that over time, we ourselves developed good filters, good lenses, sharper ways of seeing. But when we're making images, we're replicating those same problems of the gaze, right? The apparatus is the same. The relationship between the subject, author, and technology is not very different from this, right? Like, there's the subject, and there's the lens, and there's the person, right? And so you can see it's not very hard to figure the power dynamics there, right? They're sliding way far away from the subject and going completely in favor of the technology and definitely in favor of who's in charge there, right? The US Army. So when I had a child and we began playing this Japanese game, I think you all know the game, rock, paper, scissors, or Janken Pon. It was very interesting to be able to show a child an interplay of forces, right? And to somehow even explain to him how something as soft as paper can overpower or overcome something as hard as a rock. But because I'm a dancer and I like mudras as well, this game became a way, and I teach it sometimes, so please forgive the pedantic nature of what I'm saying, but a way for me to unpack for both myself and then for young image makers, also people who study images, the sort of triangular relationship between the subject, author, and technology, right? So here's the camera, there's the director, author, who yells cut, and there's the subject, right? Come, enter my home, sit on my face, film the hell out of me, take my soul away, whatever. So at the moment of filming, these are the this is a traditional, I'm simplifying it and flattening the relationships, but that's really what it is, right? Subject, author, technology. When the sort of process of filmmaking or shooting is over, the same power dynamics remains, right? The subject is now footage. The editor is cutting away, and the director is still, in that sense, calling the shots. And finally, this turns around to the screen, the audience, and the author. And in this, you can see what I'm getting at, right? Some of the rules don't devolve, they don't change. And for us, we were always of the opinion that both subjects, authors, and technology should be or could be thought as equally powerful, but also equally fragile, equally complex, equally fraught, and should also be able to exchange something, right? Something's got to devolve to go somewhere else, and something's got to go from there and transfer. And could they really either balance out or even radically just change their positions, right? So this became, and I still sometimes use it, right? It's a fundamental filter. It's become a sort of ethos of how CAM makes images. And you ask some hard questions on the drawing board first, right? This is for us like study or studio before we go out into the world. So an early, very short clip from an early work that tried to address some of these things that I just put on.
लव म्यारेज बिहा भएको हाम्रो पनि त्यस्तै भएको यतै टक्क मात्र बिहा छ
यता छैन त कोही पनि त्यस्तो छ
त हो क्या हो आदिवासी हो कि मधेसी हो कि बिहारी हो कि के हो
हामी मुन्डा हो
अच्छा
ए आदिवासी हो तिमी
हजुर
ए
नेपाली बोल्नु त आउँदो रहेछ तपाईँले
त्यो नेपालीको बुढी भएपछि आउँदैन त
ए
हाम्रो भाउजू पनि नेपाली छ त
हामी त नेपाली हो
थाहा छैन
हामी त खाटी खुट्टी तलदेखि माथिसम्म नेपाली हो
completely off
तपाईँ त सँगै बताउँछ नेपाली हो भनेर
ए केले
computer and this.
सँगै हेऱ्यो भने थाहा भइहाल्छ नेपाली हो भनेर
ए बेसी जस्तो त हाम्रैले चिन्छ नि होइन
दिल्लीमा लगाउँदैन तर सबैजना
म त लाउँछु है
छेमा लगाएको छैन
मैले लगाएको छु
मैले पनि लगाएको छु
आज लगाएको छु तर
म त सधैँ लाउँछु
म पनि सधैँ लाउँछु
नेपाली हो भने जग्गा
सिन्दुर मात्रै कहिले कहिले लाउँछु म त
नेपालीको नि मङ्गलसूत्र हारे नि यो चाहिँ
बिना सुनको
The
त
audio is running about 5 seconds ahead for some reason.
यहाँ सुनको मङ्गलसूत्र हुन्छ गाउँमा बिना सुनको मङ्गलसूत्र
अब मेरो कुरा भयो अब हजुरसित कुरा गर्नुहोस्
दे
दिल्लीमा आएर किन सुन्नु लगाएको त
बुढाहरूले के पो लाउनु बुढाहरूले टिपेर कहाँबाट लाउनु
बुढोले दिएको छ नि एउटा ठुलो चुन
सानो
राखेको छ त्यो ज्यादा ठुलो भयो
बुढाहरूका कमाइले पुगेमा सुन लाउनु त रे
त्यो पनि भयो चोरहरू लगिदियो भने
कसले लान्छ
यसरी लुकाएर राखेको छ
लग्यो त राम्रै त लग्यो
यसरी राम्रो
लग्यो पनि लैजाओस्
अनि बुढाको सुन त लाँदैन हो सक्दैन कसरी लानु
कसले सकिहाल्छ कि के थाहा
सक्दैन
सकिहाल्छ
अरूले लगे पनि राति आफ्नै पार्छ
कसले राम्रैसँग लगिदियो भने
लाँदैन लाँदैन
दिउँसोभरि लान्छ राति आइहाल्छ
बुढैसँग लिदियो भने के गर्नुहुन्छ
त्यो मात्रै काटेर लैजा बुढोलाई छोड्दे
बुढो त फेरि स्वर्गवास हुन्छ त
के हुन्छ फेरि पलाउँछ नि
नेपाली गाउँमा लगेर देखाउँछ हाम्रो तस्बिर अनि हेर्छ आफै नि नेपाली
So, of course, one of the other sort of problems with the way, say, I was filming at Said and as many of us continue to film, was that if the subaltern speaks, then you have to hear him speak about a problem. So these were the things that really disturbed us. We have the tradition of, community media that NGOs would do when the news magazine would be called Our Voice, Our Problems, right? Hear it from us, but don't hear us write poetry, don't hear us make fiction films, hear our problems. So it's an early work, it's 2006, and what you see is CCTV cameras that have just come into the market in India. They're about like $10 a piece, those static cameras. This video splitter is the generic CCTV like multiplexer where you get 4 images, and that's a standard mic with a RX XLR cable. And what's happening is it's a neighborhood network. There was a series of these neighborhood conversations that we did where all the wires were 100 meters, but they are going from the television set to the CCTV splitter box. They're going from the mics to just a 4-track mixer, and then they're going both the 4 combined video, and all this costs like $60, huh? But they're going into this cable TV box, which is an RF modulator, and from there, one wire is going to the back of the TVs, right? The cable TV jack. And so these neighborhood conversations, and of course, one feed is going to cable live, but the other audio is going into the mini DV camera, where the author is not recording, but the lens cap is closed, right? So something else, there is this machine eye, or rather eyes, but what is happening here is the TV set, that household TV set has become the space of production. They're looking in, but the image is looking back out at them. And the sort of crosshair grid that usually contains an image is now, and the one that's used whether you're shooting, whether you're doing either scan or whether you're doing photography, right? You use the crosshair to really target, is now, it's not containing, it's not framing one moment, but they're sort of splitting, right? It's splitting and combining at the same time. So where your gaze has to fall. And I apologize that the audio was out of sync. I hope it's not like that for the rest of the work, and if that created any like disconcerting thing between the audio. But so that's what's happening here, and it is for us one of our very early attempts at trying to reorganize the positions of subject, author, but also of cutting through those various stages, right, of the edit and the production, and at what time do the subjects see your work, and when does, so all of those, both the relationships in one sense turn around, but also those three stages collapse in some way. So it's around this time that we set up camp, and I don't want to go too much into detail, but it's the time there's this Chinese art market boom, and suddenly there's going to be an Indian art market that's arriving, and galleries are opening downtown. And so it was very important for us to have a space, to be able to create infrastructure, but also to be able to pose as something we weren't, and maybe we still aren't, right, like an organization. So we set up camp, and I remember while trying to name it, we'd have all these jokes, right? In at least 150,000 NGOs in India, they have names like Cry, Child of You, or Pukar, which means like call, but it's partners for urban knowledge, action, and research. And then our dear friends in Bangalore had something called CASM, collaboration around space and something, urban multimedia, it was CASM. So we set up camp, and it's pretty much just camp. If you want to write us a check, it's critical art and media practices. But other than that, our old website, which used to be camputer.org, had this matrix of words like C, A, M, and P's, and every time you loaded the website, it just, recombined another one and gave it back at you. And so the year we set it up, it's just something I pulled up because we're doing an early camp retrospective, and I've also forgotten about this, but a young intern working on open source graphic software on GIMP said, I'm going to make your business cards. And so, so these were some of the very nice ones. Comrades After Missed Promises is what I like a lot. Conversation about missing philosophies. Confidence After Material Practice. We've all got solar burns, been electrocuted, blown up computers in our faces, put our fingers into live sockets, and all of that. And we're confident. But there was one more that was, it looked something like this. I can't find the card, but I found this image. But which was, in India you see all these crisscrossing wires usually, and over light poles, and over the wires, instead of the crows sitting, were these CCTV cameras, and it just said Challenges After Media Practices, and that's the one I would take out to give all my documentary filmmaker friends. Aha, and they get really pissed off, and also wouldn't get it. But so this is then this world, right? Like where we are making contemporary images, and on the one hand, we are questioning just our positions, our positionalities, the huge disparity between you being the author, doing this sort of collaborative, participatory, ethnographic work. There is always going to be. And you're questioning the media. But at the same time, when you look around you, like I'm saying, Challenges After Media Practice, you're staring at this landscape that is very different from your own preoccupations of resolution and which camera I need to buy. This is this gap between the sort of mediums and material that's floating around you and what you're working with. So, that's funny. It's called Yan, which is khirkiyan. The work that I showed you earlier was also windows, khirkiyan, plural of windows, but Yan also means vehicle. But it's around this time that we set up camp that I'm invited to do a project in Manchester for their triennial. And I tell myself, okay, yet another trip to the UK. The iris scans that were introduced in 2003 to photograph Iraqi civilians, or rather their iris, is also being used now in this post 9/11 moment by the UK Border Agency. And I'm like, I already have done this 4 times, and by now I've done it 14 times. I've counted. I thought the iris scanning fingerprints are permanent, but every year if I apply for a visa to the UK, there it is again, 10 fingers, iris scan. And I can go around and still go around the UK feeling like this over-profiled South Asian subject. I see how control society takes over my body. I don't feel myself. I feel I'm watched. It is Big Brother, rather you're a queen subject, right? It's not Big Brother's watching you, but you're a queen subject. And so always, and at the same time, instead of going in there and trying to make a work about being South Asian in this, imperial nation, you have to flip this around. So that's also something we do at camp. We're like, okay, let's not lament about what we don't have, because as artists, we have tons of privilege. And as a contemporary artist, you have no clue what privileges you have, right? So I'm telling the curator, I want to enter CCTV control room. Why? Art project. And it's possible, right? And then she's like, okay, how do we do this? I'm like, education department. Then she's like, you're so right, we have digital young people's program. So I'm like, yeah, let's ask the police, and let's ask the uni, and let's ask everybody in Manchester if we can enter control rooms, then we get the permission. And then I'm like, now ask if we can open them up to members of the public. That's where the actually young people's program came in, and so we did it via them. And so here I am, right, with all the iris scanning and profiling and interrogation at the airport, but then I'm inside a control room, which not many of my fellow artist friends, in fact they also came because my UK friends, like, okay, let's go in. But anyway, 40 people signed up in the course of those 3-4 days, and I just want to play you a little bit because some of our work then takes off from this moment. Hope it plays with correct audio.
Pricing.
Swing camera 17 on to your left, or camera 13 towards the gate, so all certified.
It's offset. We should sort this
A
out.
guy and a girl pushing a trolley, having a blazing row with each other, opposite the church.
And just make sure she's alright. Just check. Pull back out. I'll just keep an eye from a distance now. Just to so I'm not in their personal space, but obviously something's going on. We don't know this. He's going to get aggressive towards the girl. Let's do loud and clear.
That's how it is.
They've actually split up now. She's walking towards what used to be the metro. I'll say it's Park, and he's on route towards camera 17. Over. Security. Sorry.
Obviously, the best.
Do you know where it is?
Always sorting them.
Does that kind of get adrenaline?
Yeah, because we deal with some really nasty stuff sometimes. I'll be watching someone knowing full well they're running up there, and if they got back to me, I'll swing this one round and I'll be ready. And then if they turn that way, I'll swing it there ready. Just to keep it continuity.
And do you film stuff yourself? Like, I don't know, holiday videos or anything like that you would edit? No. Are you?
Life in front of cameras.
So you're not interested in kind of filmmaking or not?
Not to that extent.
So can people request their images off you then?
If somebody's walking through the campus, say, and they see a camera, they are quite within their rights of the Data Protection Act to request to see any footage that they think may have been taken of them. But in saying that, they're allowed to see that footage, but any other persons on that footage have got to be below date. So it's a bit of a, are you with me? It's a lot, it's a quite a complicated process, and in the 10 years I've been here, I've never known anyone to ask it.
So we asked. So, hidden somewhere in the folds. Now, of course, GDPR and things have changed as of last year with the EU doing. But at that point in the Data Protection Act, somewhere in the fine print, was a clause that said if you feel you're being watched untowardly, you're well within your rights to go and ask for your footage, and you have to give a £10 processing fee. So what we did is we concatenated the provisions of that part of the Data Protection Act with the standard imageries from it, like Ashley just asked me to sign. And we and the young people's Livewire digital, the youth program, and my colleagues from Corner House, the space I was working with, took these imageries forms and walked around the largest mall in Europe then. This was the Arndale Mall in Manchester City, which had been the site of an IRA bombing that had torn up the building and then it gets late. That's what tends to happen. So, when this bomb went off in Manchester, the newspaper actually in the city used this as a moment to, some of the headlines said things like "saved by the bomb," and every cloud has a silver lining, or every cloud has a lining. And they used this to put in a very large-scale regeneration plan into an area, the oldest industrial city in the world, the first city in the world in that sense, Manchester with its mills. A very big regeneration plan, right? That was to change Gunchester back to Manchester. And so what happened was the little mall, like the rundown mall which was bombed, nobody died, IRA phoned and everybody got out, the building imploded. The footprint sort of went big, right, to become the largest mall in Europe. And when it became big, it sat over the historic city center, which was Market Street, Cotton Exchange, and like literally touched into the Cheetham Library, where Engels had written The Condition of Working Class, and Marx and he wrote the Communist Manifesto. So this whole city center, so as this footprint grew, the CCTV actually has that imprint, right? New Cannon Street, Upper Mall, it'll say Exchange Square, Cotton Exchange. So here's a film made from 206 cameras inside that large mall. If you pay attention, what's going on is the CCTV operators are really doing matched cut continuity, right? You exit somewhere and you turn into a door, cut, you're coming out of the door from another angle, and then you exit, and this kind of match cutting is going on. So essentially it was a public art prank. We were actually spending those 2 or 3 days speaking to people, pointing out to the cameras, explaining things to them, getting them to sign those forms. And then we actually took all the while the CCTV operators are still filming, right? So yeah, like that's John, he's holding the forms till he meets someone, but he's lurking. But when he meets someone, you know, this sort of generative thing where if someone signed, then we said, okay, but are you okay to be filmed for 5-6 minutes, because that's what we'll do, right? And then we feel okay following you. And that way we went up to the authorities and were like, here's 300 forms and we want the footage, right? So we really worked that data protection clause, and yeah, it was a successful public art prime, from which we made this film called Capital Circus, which I mean, it's a plot going nowhere, but when you see it for the duration of the edit, ominous things start happening, but they're totally not ominous, they're just normal people walking around. Yeah, it has some arcs and build-ups, even though they're everyday CCTV, nothing really happens. And when things happen, it's too late. That's the control and the mode. Yeah. So, if you saw what the CCTV operators do, I don't think we showed you a scene of how they operate, right? So they have this PTZ, pan, tilt, zoom, joystick, and a keypad, and you key in those complex numbers that you just saw, right? Like camera C503. And then you have control of that camera. And then it's pretty ludicrous. It's like pan, tilt, and we use this thing to zoom and then tilt up and down. So, of course, I learned a lot from those guards in the control room, and also learned to understand them, right? It's easy to dismiss them as the 5-pound-an-hour guard, but they would also DJ locally. They also came from neighborhoods where there's still violence, right? Like you protect banks, you protect universities, but in the suburbs where a lot of these guards lived, it was still pretty bad. You had women come in and say, can you show me this place in the park? He's like, oh yeah, dead easy, I can show it to you from 4 cameras. And when he finishes flexing and showing, she's like, I got held at gunpoint. Nobody came to help me, right? So, but very curious and also stunned at the scope of one PTZ, not 206 of them. I bought one of them on Edgware Road in London and took it to Jerusalem, East Jerusalem, Palestine. And when we were invited for this project, again, of course, you have to, you have to ask these hard questions. And I think the 3 questions I put to myself and to others at camp was, do we want to be the 1249th film crew going to Palestine to make a film? Because yes, we care. And yes, we do have a political position about Palestine, but then do we want to be this, X number? And it's a problematic question, and you have to either learn to say no, or if you're curious, and curiosity and the urge to travel gets the better of you, and you also want to make a film, maybe you are a careerist, you say, no, I want to go, I want to stay with the trouble. Then the next question is, but then how do you make this film without acknowledging the Israeli state? Right? You don't want to put a tripod in the city and ask them for permission, and that will just, then don't go, you know. So TK, that's your next question. And then the third, I think, which is the kernel of the, going back to sort of the rock, paper, scissors thing is, by then I also had Palestinian artist friends would be telling us, yeah, you guys have Bollywood, we have Pallywood, right? And you don't realize, like, turn a camera on, and of course the victim narrative comes out, and it's like the poverty narrative comes out in India, and it's not to fault the subjects, but yes, when you live in these sort of permanent states of exception, and then things have been mediatized a certain way, you do the family portrait, and you say to a family in Sheikh Jarrah in East Jerusalem, so how is it like to live under this permanent state of internment, and a certain narrative will come spinning out. So how do you not do that, right? How do you make another story about the city? Not like Ilya Suleiman type comedy, but how do you work with this geography, but somehow make it somewhat of a transformative experience, or with the subjects, right? So these were the three questions, and that's the one camera that we take. We put it, it's actually one of the PTZs, these dome cameras. When you step out, you'll see tons of them. And we worked with 8 Palestinian families who, in the course of the work, would put the camera up on their terrace or in a position of vantage. And in some cases, they were actually evicted from their homes, and there were settlers in their house. So in one very known case, they were squatting and in a solidarity tent 150 meters up from their home, right? And people would come there, and it was a solidarity tent. So in that case, the camera, which is this one, was on the neighbor's house. But in most cases, just like Khirkiya, the camera is up now on the roof, and the feed is being sent into the privacy and the safety and the television set of their homes, where the family has had the parental Zoom joystick, and they would control the image, watch it on their TV, and speak live over it, right? So that's the moment of filming, but that's also then the moment of the work in that sense that's happened. So again, those stages are collapsed in that sense. So here's, that's the poster that was made from this. Yeah, don't ask us why we had orange power. If you look closely in this image, you see like other CCTV cameras there. This is the family that was not at home, but in just on the street, in the neighbor's house, outside the neighbor's house, where they would take mattresses and sleep for the 63 days that they'd been evicted. So I'm going to just close this because everything seems to play off sync, and I think doing this helps it.
On?
So it's a quick cut, it's a 60-minute film, and it's a very slow film, and it speeds things up.
المكان ما بعرف ليش الظاهر كانت محكمة السابق على زمن الأتراك، كان حرس الحدود والبوليس في لهم مركز يعني رئيسي. وهذا الباب اللي هون ما هو هذا تبعي. هذا هامس تحت البيت عندي. هذه الآثار أصلاً كان بيت مختار حاره المغاربة. وفي البداية رفضوا إخلاء المكان، لكن اضطروا إنه يخلوا، وفي البداية عملوا مركز بوليس. بعدين جديد هذا الحكي له تقريباً سنة عم بيعملوا حفريات، اكتشفوا آثار رومانية. هم عم بيحاولوا إنه يكتشفوا آثار تابعة للإسرائيليين. لغاية الآن ما في.
طيب نشوف هون جنب الدار شي زي كأنها مدرسة.
هاي المدرسة الدينية، هذه كانت أملاك للخارجي وصدرت لأسباب أمنية سنة 68 وأعطيت سنة 78 للربع الشيعي غولن، وما قدرنا نعمل أي شيء فعملوها مدرسة دينية. مدرسة دينية يعني شو بقى؟
ممكن يعني أكثر يعني بقعة جغرافية هنا كاميرات وداخل بغدادين حوالي 1500 كاميرا، والواحد يروح يشتري لهم دور يعرف وين راح من هنا. في مكتوب عن في الجامعة ولا أو صور طبعا بشوف كل شيء.
You see my little brother and my cousin around the houses. And I want to let you see the tree is died now.
الليمونة صار فيها.
وين الليمونة؟
هي شوف الليمونة هاي نشفت هاي لا بسكورها ولا شيء، حتى لا بقشوا ولا شيء. اليوم 51 يوم لهلا ما شوش الدرجات برا 61 يوم ولا قشوا ولا نتفه. لا تعالي شوفي هو كيف بقى المكياج تعالي من هيك محمد وين نسوي بابا تعالي ما اقطع مطبق لا مش عارفه ما احنا نسوي عليه عاملين قاطع هيك الفستان طلع مش عارفين. محمد بطل مستوطن حييده
شو بدك؟ هنا وانا مرتاحين. شو بدك تسوي؟ اللي معي إسرائيلية في دي؟
طبعا لا.
شو الحدا بسوي؟ تعمل إشي؟ طبعا كلكاني للواحد. وفي زي ما حبيت حبيته.
ليش هذا الجزء من الجدار بيختلف عن الجزء اللي تحت؟
عشان بين البيوت.
وهناك كمان بين البيوت بالشارع بس البيوت
هلا هون
ليش هناك معمول من
انت بتحكي هذا هون لغايه هون عند بالضبط ورا هذا البيت واقف البلوكس لانه هون فيش بيوت. وهون احنا اللي طلبنا بين البنت على شطرتها حكينا المكان اللي بنحطه بلوكس. عرفتي؟
When the wall was built, they took part of this house's balcony, which we can see now, and part of the house is the border of the wall. And they've closed the windows with iron bars, and they put the fence on the roof. There we go. So this is not part of the wall.
هي لو تشوف البلكون السنة يخف عليكم من الأرض للسطح كله حديد فوق هيك حطوه يعني تطلع عليه انت من بعيد فكري سجن فكري يعني شيء عسكري حصين
مرتب زي ما بنطلع على السوق
So that's the neighbor before the house, and it was filmed in 2009, around this time, October 2009. And then, so when you return back on site, like we were invited for a show, so the first iteration was just taking, editing each family's footage, liking it here into these, 12-minute, 8-minute, 10-minute cuts, and having a series of projections where you saw, sequences from each of the shoots. And then all the material went into the archive that we run, Padma, which I'll come to in a bit. And then it was a year and a half or almost 2 years later that we took the material and crafted it into a feature-length film, which then follows conventional practice of logging, transcribing, editing. But for us, the kernel of the process of what's going on is always married, right? The sound and image is generated together. You see the process, right? There's no ambiguity into how this is filmed, right? Or are they overlaying special effects, or what exactly is going on? So that's one thing that's sort of another maybe ethos of our work, that this is clear, right? We don't feel the life we feel and images we feel are already quite abstract. They're already clear. They're already complicated. So we feel as artists we don't need to sit and put more like soap on the windscreen to make things feel a little more doubtful, ambiguous, deeper, playful. It is already complex, and we like to simplify how we approach in the sense post-production and things like that. But here we are at Camp's roof, and so the stuff I've been trying to speak about in many ways is this kind of like ethos of what we do, and I like that word because it comes from like character. Ethos is character, but ethos with the eta, like the Greek word, is also in its plural. It means an abode or a place of dwelling, right? And it also therefore, before the character comes, the ethos with the eta means a habitual way of doing. Right? So you have to do something to have that characteristic of that thing, right? So I like this play of ethos and ethos, and in very simple terms, you have to become something by doing, right? I cannot say feminist epistemology unless I make it and I do it and I live it, right? So it has to come from that place, but you need the technique. You have to do. It's hands-dirtying, non-alienated way of doing things, and a dancer cannot become a dancer until she dances, and the painter has to paint, and archivists have to archive, and contemporary image makers have to first look around at the contemporary image, right? And so on. So it's about the doing, and so that's what brings us to small diversion into Padma, but and into our roof. It is our abode, our dwelling. It's where a lot of those infrastructures rest and reside. But in 2007, just as we set up camp, this is one of the first things we did, right? So we were 3-4 friends, no money, no funding, but this ambition of saying we need to intervene in our Bombay city's landscape, right? And we need to do something outside of this art world, which we're not really part of. Like, we were never part of this gallery scene because we didn't come from the plastic arts in that sense. So we put together Padma, right? What's its ethos? It's an open source archive. The software is open from the kernel to the thing. You can take it, you can copy it. It's really my one response if anybody came for Blisslin's talk was to tell her, because she spoke about friendship, she spoke about working, with the filmmakers and the archivists and the activists. Don't wait for the archive, don't wait for it. Don't ever wait for a state archive, because as she told us, and as we all know, it's fraught, it'll be missing, it has its colonial history, it has its state terror, but something has changed in the 90s, right? That, again, digital entered our lives, right? It entered the river of time like this. And it entered the river of time everywhere, right? It was a flat entry. And it changed everything in India, right? For the documentary filmmaker, she could suddenly edit on a computer, afford 100 rupees for a mini DV tape. The camera became more intimate. All these things the MIT guys were thinking about now suddenly were, in that moment of direct cinema, was in everybody's hand. And so and I think the other important thing about this digital entering the river of time was that in our moment of, this wasn't pirate modernity, right? This entry was not how our blue jeans and our VCRs and our color TVs came to us smuggled, right? This is different. Digital doesn't need to arrive, right? So, Microsoft Word is on everyone's computers. Indians get computer. Southeast Asia, everybody gets literate. We can buy world cinema for 30 rupees. We can download it. It changes everything. And so at that moment, we really told ourselves in the community, if you want to build a non-state archive, then it's us. For 25 years, we've been making films. Our shooting ratios have changed. For a 60-minute film, you have 100 hours of footage. Is this footage residue? Is this footage trash? Or to use the old film, when you chop thing and it would fall down, you'd say NG, right? Like those little bits of frames that you wouldn't use. The whole economy has changed, and are your 90 hours useless after you struggled to make that 1 hour film, right? So that's where, and what is the process up to there? You research, you transcribe, you log, it's all done to time code. So your 90 hours were pretty well looked after before they go into shoeboxes under your bed, right? So we said if we have to build this non-state archive and we have to build it together, where is its dwelling and abode, or its ethos? It's online, it has to be on the internet. Who are its custodians and contributors? It's all of us, and so on. And that's where Padma Public Access Digital Media Archive was born. I won't go into its architecture, but that's also been thought of by the group, amongst which CAMP is just one part. There's 0xDB in Berlin, there was Alternative Law Forum in Bangalore closely involved, but essentially lawyers, pirates, artists, filmmakers, cinephiles, hackers, coders. And that's a group of 8 close friends who put the archive together. And of course, what it does to text and image and full text search, and what it does towards building new pedagogies and stuff, it's been a nice 10-year-old journey, and it needs its own moment. But in this sort of time, as we were archiving things in Padma, as contributors were contributing, there was this, right? Government tapped phone calls of a corporate lobbyist called Neera Radea were leaked. So we were also now in this time of, WikiLeaks and a cogent media form, right? Leaks. It's evil media, but yet it has a cogency and a power that we again can't ignore, right? So people will be like, oh God, but what did those diplomatic cables tell us? It's just a dump. We know what the US did in Iran, right? Like, there's nothing new in these dumps. But the devil's always in the details, right? And the statecraft and how these things work. And so for us, the Radea tapes, when they were online and somebody on Kafla put a request to crowdsource and transcribe the tapes, and we're like, hey, we have the tools because everything's done to time code then. It's done very precisely, the keywording, the indexing, the way things are possible in Padma. So the tapes started getting, people started contributing the transcripts, and there they went to Padma, which of course prompted us to listen to them first. And it's a two-part work that emerged. So this takes you from camera to just eavesdropping state. The first was a screenplay, so it's a threat of a film that obviously can't be made because you possibly can't have the film starring half a dozen ministers and your top journalists and so on. So it's a screenplay which we read and perform with all its settings, right? It's known exterior, touring Motilal Park, slamming of car doors, something, and then the transcripts almost verbatim play out as a screenplay. But the other part was a film called Hum Logos. It's online. It's vicarious, as it should be, and it's worth listening to. Of course, it's still, I have to say, what the film exposed was an era of very dark crony capitalism and how big media, big politics, and big money meets. But I think now we're into like proper oligarchy. It's much worse now. And I hope it plays in sync, even though it's just audio. Yo.
Hi, Neera.
Hi, did I wake you up?
No, I've been up here most of the night. The stalemate continues here.
Yeah, I'll tell you what it is. The problem, and I've had a long chat with both his wife and with the daughter, right? What she's saying is that, someone senior like Ghulam, because he's the one who's authorized to wants to speak to her, then she can tell her father that I have got this message from the Congress. She can not talk to. That's not a problem. I'll talk to her right after we get out of us here.
Hi, Neera.
Hi, Veer. Where are you, Delhi or?
I'm in Jaipur. Coming back this evening.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to, I've been talking to my Tamil Nadu friends.
Okay.
I just need to, I don't know whether you are in a position to get through to anyone at Congress. I just met Kani just now.
Okay.
And I've been, we've been at it since yesterday. The problem
I'm
is...
supposed to meet Sonia today, but I've been stuck here, so now it's coming tomorrow. I've been dealing with Rahul, but tell me.
No, I'll tell you what they need. They're not understanding that they're actually communicating with the wrong guy.
Right. So who should they talk to?
They need to talk directly to Karunanidhi. They need to talk to Kani.
Sonia spoke to him yesterday, no?
No, only Prime Minister spoke to him, and that was Kani was translating for him. It was very brief that, let's try and resolve this issue, there's nothing at all, or whatever. They need to get Ghulam Nabi Azad to speak to Kani Modi. Seriously, that's the only thing that will work, and Kani will take them to her.
I won't get through to Sonia in the short term, maybe I can get through to Ahmed.
Yeah, I think they feel that even if there is any gesture, that they will respond very favorably.
Okay, let me just try and get through. this is with counterpoint. So it will be like most red. So it can't seem too slanted, yet it's an ideal opportunity to get all the points across.
Basically, the point is that what has happened as far as the High Court is concerned is a very painful thing for the country, because this is what is done is against national interest.
Okay.
I think that's the underlying message.
Okay, yeah, that message will do. That the allocation of resources, which are scarce natural resources of our country, cannot be done in this arbitrary fashion to benefit few rich people.
That's right.
Yes, that message will get across. So what other points do we need to make?
Hi.
Hi, Gita.
Yeah.
Okay, wrote it. I've dressed it up as a piece about how public will not stand for our resources being cornered, how we're creating a new list of oligarchs. The examples I've given is the court case which says that mummy will decide, and it's all family, that why should our gas be decided by mummy. I've given this example of how spectrum is being allocated. And I've said that while people have a certain tolerance for corruption in this country, they have no tolerance for people cornering our assets, and then Manmohan Singh must act because he's basically giving away the future of budget.
Very nice. Lovely. Thank you, Veer.
I mean, it's dressed up as a plea to Manmohan Singh, so it won't look like an inter-Ambani battle thing except people in the know.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Where do you say that one person is, I must know,
Don't be unclear.
okay. No, I can't see the one person thing. Oh yeah, it's one thing for an industrialist, yeah.
Yeah. What about them?
Another for him, yeah. One thing is to pay off our point to build a factory, quite another one to corner our gas, our coal, our spectrum, I don't know so much. Yeah, that's right. You doing your piece, no, you know?
Yeah, I'm writing something, yeah. Basically, I'm looking at a larger piece on a bit like what Veer Sangvi actually preempted me a little. That was the line I was going to take, you know. That in critical resources, there should be a national policy. And I was planning a strong period. We are not a banana republic, you know. Where some bloody company is deciding government policy, you know, in Africa, for instance.
Correct.
So you know.
Okay, now I get it.
I just got on this treadmill. On this battle, I'm trying to get Mukesh to come out and talk.
Yeah.
You see, but the thing is, we have to be, if he talks, we have to carry it as is. In the sense that, you know, I think they're very conscious of every line, everything that goes out.
Yeah.
Because it's a battle, and it's a battle at the end of the day for us, you know. I think
Actually, Anil will have support to give interviews because he'll be asked about others saying so many things. There are so many skeletons in Anil's closet that he doesn't want to clear them. If he comes on and he says, Amar Singh is my close friend, he's fucked. If he comes on and he says, no, I have no relation with Amar Singh will kill him. So I mean, there are many awkward things, but he's decided to avoid the media. Mukesh doesn't have that problem. Mukesh can talk straight, can say things, you can rehearse, you can work out a script in advance, you can go exactly according to the script. Anil can't do any of those things, no?
Hello?
Hello?
Mr. Amar Singh, please, for Mr. Anil Ambani.
Mr. Anil Ambani wants to talk to me.
Yes, sir.
Just a moment.
Here's a minimum bandwidth cinema, is what we call it. It's a work called four-letter film, and it's a phone conversation between two friends, two girlfriends who are aware they're being eavesdropped on or listened in on. course, there's a little nod to Michael Snow's This Is Not a Film. But this is a film, yeah. So this is in the Cape Modern, and this is on a facade where the building is the screen in Delhi. Where also the phone convers, the chat is different.
So what if they say more than a 4-letter word? What happens?
It travels across the screen. Or it breaks like hell and hello. But very rare use of.
So they're conscious of that?
Yes.
Okay.
They're very conscious of the fact that they're being listened into, and so it's really about like control society, right? How do we appear? What do we speak? And how do we subvert things as yeah. A lot of it is also we don't really do biographical work. This one I wrote out of direct experience of the landscape of CCTV that had started happening over that decade, but many other things in the neighborhoods. And the UK one is a French girl, and it's at the moment of a lot of surveillance and Brexit and so a lot of, now if I pause it again, it will go off. I'll rewind it. I haven't been able to figure the problem. I think it's refresh rate. The hertz is different on the projector. But, so a lot of our work has also been in, there's a lot of pre-cinema media archaeology that comes into play. And of course, one of the, in this CCTV world of, the outside, there's always this second life, right? There is this black box, this control room, literal kala kamra, black box, camera literally, right? Which is this control room, which you can't enter, in which you see second life of your city. But there was this pre-cinematic camera obscura, right, which was a room-sized camera where at the turn of the century you would go into, small people would enter this big room to see images of the outside. And there was nothing mundane about seeing images of the outside. It was a wondrous experience. But also the camera obscura, they were always on the seaside or in a mela, in a park, but the operators of camera obscuras already knew, right? Like, we have to do some scripting so that people get this vicarious pleasure of this pre-cinema world, right? So lovers were paid to do something, and theatre was happening outside as you came into this world. There's a large body of work we've done around this, but for us, the idea of cinema, right? You're in this dark room and you're traveling and you are an anonymous body, you're sitting next to someone, you don't know that person, but you're all together partaking in a shared journey, a shared experience, a shared emotions, and that really is the magic of cinema, right? And we keep finding this harder to do now. There's distraction, like how many times do we do this in the middle of a film, or there's Netflix, so you don't go to the cinema. But also, it's also hard to feel anonymous and alone, right? Those things that were the joy of being in a city, right? Like, I'm untraceable. It's like in a city you thrived because you had anonymity. You could do what you want in the middle of the day and escape into the dark. And these things are harder to do, but recently we entered the IMAX theatre in a cinema in the city which is called PVR Phoenix. Phoenix was one of our largest mills and one of the first to be murdered, right? And the way that mill shut down, and sort of incremental closure of departments and change of uses that happened in extremely twisted ways, lay down the blueprint for the mill strikes to never recover and the mills to be privatized, and the whole landscape of Lower Parel, which was called Girangan, the village of mills, changed forever, right? It's a big part of Bombay City's industrial history, just like the mills were to Manchester in that sense, and those cities also have this relationship. But this is now again, bizarrely, PVR, this Phoenix Mall, Palladium and stuff, till some Gurgaon Mall just trumped it, was again the largest entertainment thing, right? It had so many thousand square feet of this retail and higher end retail and this 5-star hotel with a sky bar and some roof that's never been made and a car park of 45,000 cars that's never been made and so on. So here we are in the IMAX, one panel film camera in the same way, in many ways, as in Jerusalem, but by now they're HD and now they're even 4K since we've done this project, was put up on the roof of the mall, on the roof of the cinema, and we're in the 7th screen, and we told a 200-year history of the neighborhood and the city as well as Parel. But by speaking live, that's Simpreet, that's Ashok, and that's myself. We were just in Chicago doing lecture performances but around something else, but that's how we do it, whether it's on our roof or, but it, just to bring in this other aspect of live cinema and what it can do.
Between what you see and what you know. But these two, there's a difference between what you see and what you know. But these two things, what you see and what you know, can also dance with each other, encourage each other, replace each other, update each other, and invite into the room the hidden sisters, what you cannot see, what you don't know, or what you have forgotten. Our story begins in the sky behind the ITC Grand Central. The site. In 1891, a balloon carrying a Lieutenant Mansfield who belonged to the Royal Navy developed a leak while at about 1,000
So we begin
feet.
with the first aerial images of the city, which were taken
fell.
from a hot air balloon.
And let's call this moment our descent into Lower Parel. Parachute opened partially, but didn't stop it from falling. Strange marks appeared. He remembered his calls. He got closer to the ground.
It's this vertical drop that's been going on from the sky.
Ground at last. And yes, the inevitable happened. He died. But if he had fallen 150 years before that, or for that matter, any time before 1784, then it could be that he would have escaped death. Because it could have been that he would have landed in water. And as we find in this rather beautiful model of Bombay pre-1784, let me show you this beautiful model. The center of what we call the island, from Dharavi in the north to Girgaon in the south, from Wali in the west to Paivani,
Cap is
Paivani ki jagah, east was sea, was sea water.
That's the ballad. It is down. So another sea. This is the English Channel, where this is the narrowest part of the English Channel. So that's your Dover to Calais or Folkestone to Boulogne, where the ferries go, the channel that connects the continent to the UK. And so while the CCTV operators in the control rooms were, they were asked by the person asking that question, do you make holiday videos, or is a film curator? Like, I don't know how, she was a curator for the Liverpool Violin, and she walked in to ask the operator these questions. But within that kind of work, they really can't, obviously exercise their hobbies. They're bound by things. But in Folkestone, what was happening was something quite peculiar. This is a old Martello Tower, and that's a World War, the Napoleon bunker, Napoleon War bunker, and that's a World War II bunker. And Folkestone somehow was not behind the cliff and had a better view of controlling the sea than Dover, which was the main, more commercial port, and where the ferries and all the crossing happens and the ships come in. And David Cameron at this moment was talking about something called big society. Very perverse idea, but it's like, since communities are organizing themselves and saying, I can do my community garden better than you, I can run my local school with friends better than you, he's like, then do it. And the state starts reneging, right? National Health Service reneges his promise. So in this moment, what David Cameron was doing was calling it the big society, which is DIY, do it with yourself, do it with others, and do it better, and the state will renege. So it was a peculiar moment where the coast watchers here were pensioners. So also the last generation then of someone who's 60 and 75, between that age, but is on pension, right? Even that was long ago. So these old age pensioners would volunteer their time to be the ghost watchers. And so we said, if that's what it is, then you're not really answerable to anyone but yourselves. And so as we met them, we realized that almost all of them post-retirement had a love for the sea, had worked on the sea. They were either fishermen or they were stewards on those ferries. So over the course of a year, we worked with these watchers, where it was not just watching the sea, but it was filming the sea, and it was love for the sea in quite a different way. Right.
Right, this is the fishing boat Seashell. About to, oh look, so it's about to latch on to one of its pots and put it up. Oh good. Struggling a little, it appears. Whee! Little swell there.
It's a work called The Country of the Blind and Other Stories.
Looks as though they're holding a net, doesn't it? They won't have a net out there, can they?
Could be a pot.
Yeah, I was going to say, perhaps it's just line they're pulling in.
So for a year they filmed
It's the pots. Lines of the pots.
Yeah,
things near
Lots of
Park.
I'd have thought so. Lots of line, not much pot amount. No quotas for lobsters, are there?
No, mainly cod and sole in the Eastern Channel.
So what are they not protecting?
Non-quota.
Yeah, non.
Lemon sole, red mullet and things like whelks, crabs, shrimp, scallops.
I like all of those except the crab.
The name for lobster comes from the Old English word for locust and spider. Basically they're giant insects from the Jurassic period.
Jurassic pot. Presume there's something in the pot. He's sitting down, doing something with it, standing back up. Oh, look like a lobster.
That was a lobster and most crab.
Right, that looks like they've got a lobster there. Whee!
1640 is getting right with the direct.
Checking out tiny ones, he's already got the pot on board. Doesn't look like there are any more. Right, so that's done, let's go on. So, away we go. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun.
10 minutes to 1 in the afternoon. This is a video of an Algerian amphibious warship passing the station in the southwest lane, followed by a submarine which is also believed to be Algerian and is formerly a Russian K-class submarine, according to the Coast Guard, although we had a bit of trouble trying to identify it. Let's move pan a little bit to the left, where we should find the submarine close behind. There it is. There goes the submarine on the surface down the English Channel. That is the entire Algerian Navy we have seen this morning. It's almost as big as ours. My goodness me. Colonel Gaddafi must sleep easy in his bed with that little lot.
Algeria with stuff in.
I believe the Sultan of Brunei supplied them both with second-hand warships.
Someone said the humor was like more.
And that's the Varn. It's only 2 or 3 meters deep at that point. They say it's an island. Is it an island if you can't see it? Or how would we know? You might wash up on a stormy night.
That just says Dungeness nuclear power station.
If the army boys, there'd be a lot of them doing the run with a knapsack full of bricks.
So, I think we're running out of time. I was going to go from this sea to another sea, which is the Western Indian Ocean, or the Arabian Sea, where we've worked with sailors from 2 estuarial boat-making towns in the Gulf of Kutch in India. And it was quite a it was a project of somewhat epic scale and deep friendship that took 5 years. And the film screened in Iftikhar's class 2 days ago, and I did a discussion yesterday, so I'm just wondering I can play a clip, but do you want to see, or should we just cut? It was that I had this and one more thing to show, but we can
just show us.
Yeah, but then the sound better play. It's really disturbing if with the music and all it runs off sync. So let me refresh it like this. It tends to help. It's from somewhere in the middle of the film, but this is the area. It's of course it's skewed here, but this is the west coast of India. That's Gulf of Kutch with the 2 towns, and then this is Karachi, this is Gwadar, and then you move. This is the east coast of Africa. That's the UAE, and this is the Kuwait, then the other part of the Gulf. And what we did was we did the continental drift and just brought Asia and Africa, re-drifted them back together, because that's really this country of the sea where the seafarers travel. This is the more real map, and that was the sort of opening of the film when it happened. It's traveled a lot since then and has in various formats and forms, from DCPs to acquisitions to highly circulated on cell phones, as well as online and so on, and film festivals. So I'll play a little bit. It's I think about 25 minutes through the film. For me, there's a very tight narrative that's happened in here, but for many people it doesn't matter. And I hope it's in sync.
अपने पास आ गए। जब ये सोचा तो घबरा गए। आ गए हम कहाँ आ गए। चोरी चोरी दिल तेरा चुराएंगे, अपना तुझे हम बनाएंगे, धीरे धीरे पास तेरे आएंगे, आगे दूर फिर न जाएंगे।
चोरी चोरी दिल तेरा चुराएंगे, अपना तुझे हम बनाएंगे, धीरे धीरे पास तेरे आएंगे, आगे दूर फिर न जाएंगे।
इलाही मदद कर, मदद की घड़ी है, गुनाहों के दरिया में कश्ती फंसी है। इलाही मदद कर, मदद की घड़ी है, गुनाहों के दरिया में कश्ती फंसी है। इलाही मदद कर।
والله لا تبالي لم تنسي من الرجال في جنبه
It was about 10 minutes from the. I think I'll stop here. This was a very, very good work 2 months ago, but let's can let that one go. So some time for discussion. But this I'll quickly explain is so cameras have this patrol function, CCTV, and that's usually the default they're set on, right? There's not always a live human watching it and like checking. But the patrol function is set as, traffic signal, train station, something, right? And it does these clunky movements in loop. So we hacked into the patrol function. This is a start archive. Yesterday, Lislim was talking about the kilometric proportion of Amsterdam city's archive. They claim 50 kilometers of
media?
Of the archive. Document, they just call, it's measured in kilometers. She was right in that key. They say we have 50 kilometers of city's documents, and then what she said, then within that is lots of occlusion, right, and omissions. But we basically hacked into the motor of the camera, and in a ridiculous controlled society like Amsterdam. I mean, Dutch society is quite phenomenal because they have, everything is supposed to be open, their curtains are open, people have sex with their windows open, but you're not supposed to look. So it's a very paradoxical, strange, open society. But we were able to control that clunky movement of CCTV cameras and slow down the motor and craft some pretty detailed mise-en-scène that can begin in someone's window and go somewhere. And it's a 3-channel work that's called In Cameras Res. So in that sense, it's in situ. It begins in a city that's already controlled by so many cameras. But in the 3-channel, the subjects now have control. So these journeys through the city, and they're symbolically filmed from the Stad Archive, from the Amsterdam Tower, which is the former Royal Dutch Shell building. So big, these monolithical buildings, the archive, the old church, and which was the first Napoleon, watchtower, right? Over the city was the church tower. That's the Adam Tower. You see somewhere, yeah, there's a subject who's controlling. So you say tilt down, and the camera will go down. Other things start happening. But yeah, questions?
On the boat and sea piece, I was wondering who was operating the camera. When you were on the boat looking at the other boats, was it the sailors or the men themselves?
So the primary photography in that film has been done by sailors. So like the map scene and things like that were filmed for the film, as in they were filming on their own, but we given 3 boats had handy cams, but the bulk of the footage is actually the cell phone stuff, which preceded us even knowing about them. Okay, we wanted to do this collaboration, and it's a particular trope of cell phone videos that they marry 2 songs in their playlists. So they circulate as single-take music videos. And they're very ephemeral because they'll circulate for a while, then you don't have space, and also at that point memory, I don't think you had even cards, right? You had inbuilt memory, then you had cards. So they'll also get deleted quite fast. But the spine of the film is really the cell phone footage. And then the 3 boats that are filming, and then stuff on land. So all that departure from Sharjah is us, right? Like steady camera. So that's the 3. So almost always, even in the music videos, it's one boat filming another, right? So even though you're out at sea and maybe you don't see anyone, when you see your bandhu boat or you see this vahan that's familiar to you and you probably know which boat it is when the filming begins, right? So it's almost always one boat filming another. That's really the. So even the tufan, the storm sequence is 9 different storms over years, right? So that within this linear narrative keeps one journey. The temporality footage shifted from 110 pixels, which is 2003 and 4 cell phone, to better res in 2007 with the Nokia Express. And then some later better than even the stuff we were filming because they had nice Samsungs.
I was just wondering, thank you for this wonderful presentation, and we got an entire picture of your journey from being from 1980s probably or 1990s up to so this time. So what is the change that you are seeing? The entire thing was about, I became very conscious now of the presence of cameras around, something which probably was not, so I was not keenly aware of that before watching this entire thing. So what really do you think has happened in the last 20-25 years with cameras there? And since you do all these recordings with an hands-on guy, right, so you know that there are cameras and how cameras work and all, but have you met people who are not as informed as artists are, and then they offering you their own footage, their own understanding of how they have recorded their lives? Do you use those things? Most of these things are
Palestine film is filmed by Palestinian residents who used the camera.
So they give you their own footage, they tell that, see, this is what we have recorded.
Yeah, in that case we took the camera to Jerusalem, but I don't speak Arabic, so apart from, setting the camera up and chatting and general gist of why we're making this film, they took it away, right? It's their material, they're filming, they're talking, it's their bodies doing the pan tilt, it's their eyes seeking in the screen, can I get into that window where I was born? It's their mastery or hesitancy or doubt over the footage, which for me, someone might say this is amateur photography, but it's like, it contains married within it a kind of energy and literally a kind of skill that's quickly mastered over this ludic pan tilt zoom thing. Like in one of the scenes which I didn't show you, I've been to mount the camera the other way around, right? Because usually the dome is suspended, but now they were lifting it up on a crane like this. So for Mr. Ghawi, left became right, bottom became up, like the controls got reversed, right? Because the camera went upside down. And it took him, he's holding the joystick for the first time, he's doing right, he realizes image is going left. So he has to do the opposite. It takes him a minute. And then the first thing he does in his house is zoom in to 3 holes, screw holes on the brick, on the brownstone, where he says the Israelis mounted a camera, which then someone came through, right? So this desire to very precisely, so first he was zooming out, but it was in. Anyway, you don't know this thing, but now it was ulta, but he learned it ulta, and same with the sailors, they filmed the whole film, but we didn't teach them how to film, or we didn't say, let's do video workshop where this is wide shot, this is close up.
But the sailors are people in very exceptional situation, and their occupation is something very exceptional, where they are probably lonely, and the camera is a kind of thing that gives them a certain kind of company, and they have this desire to record those things. But in everyday life, people who have been going in, like Amsterdam, where people have been leading a very normal life for centuries, and these 2-3 decades of change that, and in India especially, we see every young person has a camera, even very poor people who don't really know what to do with that, and they keep recording things. So how does that, is there a way in which that can be incorporated in your work? But why are
It
you saying they
is,
don't
no?
know what to do?
No, I know. They know, of course.
No, but that's a presumption, no, that the sailor knew how to film, but then the millions of others with cell phone camera don't.
I want to add something to it. When you started, basically when you started your whole journey, including the lecture, you were saying that when you were working as an assistant director to the Saeed Mirza, one of the main problems also the position of power that a filmmaker has. And so there are like multiple channels of that thing, like in the beginning, the one who is shooting is in the position of power, and then the one who is editing then becomes in the position of power. So how do you also address to the power dynamics in terms of editing when you take all these footage? Because I'm sure like in Gulf to Gulf to Gulf, the footage would have been like hundreds of hours, I think. And then trimming it, editing it, deciding who to cut off and who to keep in.
In all cases, right?
In
so
all
in that
cases,
sense, the radical act of saying now don't edit a film is absent, right? It's authored, it still says film by Camp, or to that extent, right? You're doing what you're doing. It's your material, you work hard, you earn, you want to make films. That's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life, right? So but to the best we can, the stages have collapsed. So the footageness of, say, Saeed asking 40 questions to Rozo before she's in tears, but we will edit that tear bit, right? And we may remove some fairly oppressive, gentle oppressive questions in the middle. So when you see the 5-minute cut,